the main focus is always on a result. And if you get that result, regardless of the system that you're using, nobody questions the system that you're using. And they're not questioning it because the focus is on the result.
I would certainly fail to realize that just because you make money doesn't mean that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You can be in a town that requires a certain thing that you have, and you just happen to have the resources that were required. Doesn't mean that you are a good business person. It means that you had something that someone else needed and they were willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Business takes up systems, and entrepreneurs usually don't really find that rhythm of systems
Yes.
until later on, because it's so much to be a solopreneur or a small business owner. It takes up so much time. Sometimes we're doing it on the other side of a job. Sometimes we're doing it after putting the kids to bed. We sometimes we just like exhausting ourselves, and we just are doing it. And then you start to get these subconscious loops, and you can do it in your sleep, and you don't really understand why you do certain things the way that you do it. And we start to tell ourselves these narratives: if I'm not doing it, nobody else can. And that's not true. If you're an entrepreneur and you may be struggling with something that I just said may resonate with you, then this episode is for you. If you are an entrepreneur and you want to get better at systems, this episode is for you. Because today we're going to talk about all things to help ourselves get better at what it is that we already do. My name is NaRon Tillman. This is Walk in Victory, where we sit you at the feet of the masters and have conversations to help you evolve your life. And today I'm so excited to have our master, Miss Liz Wolfe, coaching. How are you? Why are we so
I
bad
am
at
very well,
system
and thank you
building?
so much for having me on. It's a topic near and dear to my heart for sure. That's an excellent first question. Well, I think if you're only focused on results, which I think is something that's been ingrained in us since we were children throughout the most of the public education or any education system, the main focus is always on a result. And if you get that result, regardless of the system that you're using, nobody questions the system that you're using. And they're not questioning it because the focus is on the result. However, the big question becomes, is that result sustainable? Because without systems, you can't, I can say you can't. You will burn out. It's harder to have results consistently, sustainably, if you do not have a system. One of the reasons for that is you might ascribe, is that the right word? Subscribe? You might allocate the idea that you are successful because of chance and it was a fluke. And with a system that you can repeat, that you see results with,
A lot of
you
times people
can
may
get rid of that
struggle to find their
conversation,
system
because
because they don't think that
if you're being
all of
successful,
their
it's not through a
movements,
fluke,
all of
it's
the
through
things
your
that they
system.
do can be broken down in a systematic way. What do you say to people when you're coaching them about really looking at their day and their movements and what I like to call micro movements, the thing that makes up the day? How do you get them past just thinking that this is something that they do out of osmosis?
So I think one of the challenges that's facing entrepreneurs, especially newer entrepreneurs or side gig entrepreneurs or people who are looking to get momentum, maybe feeling stuck, is that you look to outside sources to see what system should I be using. And then once you start doing that, you discover there are thousands, okay, maybe hundreds, but certainly many tens of varieties of systems that you could be using. Some people say that, you get up real early in the morning and you start your day. Some people say, time block. Some people say task list, to-doist. Some people say, right, you're going to have so many varieties. And this is where I think people feel fa- feel failure or feel like they can't get any momentum going because they try a system and it doesn't work for them. So, for instance, I mean, I certainly can get up early in the morning, but I don't prefer to spend my time that way. However, if you catch me between 10 and midnight, when everybody's, my husband did go to bed and my kids are older now, but my kids are right or there I don't feel like I have to be waiting, okay, when's my next call, when's my next thing, what's my deadline. I can get a lot done between the hours of 10 o'clock at night and midnight, sometimes 1 in the morning. So I'm sure there are people out there who say, well, that time frame for me is between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m. I'm not going to say I sleep, till 9 a.m., but I'd rather be doing other things. I listen to podcasts or I do my exercises. I do different things. I don't really want to start my day until 9:30. So if I see one of these guru-y people who is, saying the answer is to get up at 5 a.m. and work for 2 hours, between 6 and 8 before the day starts, that's the best time. I'm going to struggle with that. And then I'm going to give up pretty quickly. So, the number one thing you want to do is acknowledge your own preferences in building your system. Another example is people time blocking is a thing, right? Schedule it on your calendar because if you schedule it on your calendar, then you will honor that time and you will write your book or you'll do whatever, you'll follow up with all your clients between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Well, that certainly is a system that works really well for people. But on the other hand, if you don't, if you feel like your style is cramped by that, or you don't tend to honor it, or you want more freedom, or you're what I call a chief enthusiasm officer, which is somebody who wants to be all over the place doing different ideas, like the idea of scheduling some one thing for a particular time block when you might be inspired to do something completely different in that moment, that can feel really constricting. So, what are your preferences? Do you there I've put it into three categories. One is the time, task, and target. Those are the three, I think, styles of people. Okay, the time people are the ones who do like to block off and they're really clear about honoring that time. Then there's the task people who like to check off the tasks when they're done. They like to make a list and feel really good when they've checked it off. And then there's the target people, and I would say I'm mostly a target people, which is whatever my deadline is, you can count on me to work on that. I don't need to time block it. I will naturally do it because I'm very conscious of the target time or the deadline time. So if you're a task person, you try time blocking, you might
That was a great
not like
answer,
that.
and that was a
If you're a
unique
target
answer.
person, you
And
try
I've
task,
been doing
right?
this for a
So
while, and
what
I'll
are your
tell you why,
preferences?
because
That's
you've
the place
given
to
people
start.
freedom to work to build the system within their own personality and their own means, right? Whereas if you was to say, as you brilliantly said, and I'm not just repeating your answer, I just want to emphasize, if you just say this is the way to do it, it scares people sometimes because they you know how many people don't finish courses, don't complete, and And now you have this whole other thing. And as an entrepreneur, how important is it for you to be confident? Now you have this thing beating you up because you're saying, see, I failed at that now, and I failed at this now. Where if you give me the freedom, I can build confidence. Let's talk about confidence quickly. Your journey, you went through some stuff, and you're very honest about how you arrived to where you are. When did you gain the confidence to become this coach? No,
Have you seen this woman online,
no, I'm gonna look her
Milani?
up.
I think her name is. She started this thing she calls the We Do Not Care Club. Have you seen her at all? And it's mostly about, have you seen her at all? Anyway, it's mostly it's mostly about perimenopause or menopause women who basically got to a point in their life called that where they we do not care. And it's hilarious if you look her up. I think it's Melani, Melani. And okay, why I'm bringing her up is she comes to mind in a it's very funny because she's like, we do not care that we walked into a room and you talked to me, and or more like, we do not care that we were texting when I was in the car, and now that I'm home I am no longer responding, 'cause people get mad. We do not care. It's very funny. So why I say that is that why don't we have confidence? Mostly we're concerned about the judgment of other people. Mostly we're concerned about how we are perceived. I It's through repeated exposure to the lack of negative consequences to any action you might be taking is part of what builds your confidence. So for me, let me also now put that in more in a coaching context or in a professional context, which is the part where a lot of people, why don't you charge more money? Why don't you pursue sales more confidently? Why do there's so many ways, right, in which we are limiting by ourselves by not acknowledging and assuming that we're not providing enough value to people. And so when looking back is way more confident building than looking forward to where you haven't gotten to yet. And so,
Mm.
yes, when I first started my business, I didn't have enough evidence to show that I was providing enough value to people. And now I I've seen enough times that I've created and given value to enough people that that's where I I get that, I would call it positive feedback.
Hmm.
I give that a lot more weight than any negative feedback, which frankly doesn't come along that frequently. But if it did, just figure I'm not the coach for you. So inexperience and is part of what will feed this feeling of lack of confidence, and then multiple exposures
And
to
that's cross industry, right? Because we
more
see
experience, good, bad, or
players in
indifferent,
sports,
is what will allow
for
you to
case in
learn
point,
the
that may
skills
have
that you
all of the
want
tools,
to make you more confident.
and they just they don't have it, what they say up here, right? It's just that we see what they don't believe. And sometimes I could come from just being good too fast, having success out the gate, and not struggling in business. Can we talk a little bit about that? How that can actually be a hindrance, having success, financial success out the gate, and not really having to struggle to find your audience. And you had, like the same example I used earlier, you just happen to have the thing that everybody in your town needs, or you just happen to have a trust and you can just throw money at something, and you're not really working that muscle on developing a system, or or really being confident in your own imagination. You're just doing it. Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. You know, this is like this idea of being an overnight success or going viral. I I like to think of building my business not as going on a journey that has some magical destination where you finally arrive. Ah, you know, rather I like to frame it, no pun intended, like you're building a house. So you're going to get the foundation, you're going to build the walls, each part of it. And if you own a house, or even if you just live in any kind of facility whatsoever, you will always have something else you could be doing at any given moment to improve or work on your house, even if you just renovated the whole thing. There's always that last wall that didn't get painted, or the part you didn't get to, or the basement, or new ideas. So it's why I like that idea more of the house metaphor rather than the final destination on your journey, sunrise, in the distance, is because you can live in a house, you can work in a house, in a quote unquote house, and it doesn't have to be that glorious finish. You can start inviting people in to this proverbial house. Okay. So if the idea of this overnight success, I think people feel like that they have to get to that point of some level of success. And until they do, they don't feel confident, or they don't, they lose that confidence, or they're just feeling dissatisfaction, that again, that feeling of stuckness. What's interesting to me is when I hear and see people who grow very, very quickly, or even if you hear about, could be even like Starbucks or one of these types of places, when you grow that quickly, if you don't have those systems in place, then you won't be able to sustain it, and it peaks and goes down. So I met a guy once, and I'm also in the music world. I'm a bluegrass musician, just so that you know. And I met this guy once, and he said it wasn't a blue, it was a like a Spanish video that he did with his brother, and it was kind of funny, and it caught on somehow, and they were on radio shows, and it was just, all these people watching this video. And I said, because you think, oh, that's great. Now, you hit the big time. And he said, and what happened was I couldn't keep up with it. I couldn't keep up with the 50,000 comments that came through the feed under the video on YouTube or whatever, because he didn't have a plan. Even when it started happening, he didn't say, "Damn, I better hire somebody quick," or anything. So he wasn't able to leverage it to continue to whatever he was doing next. And I think we see that quite a bit, even in just, your little YouTube influencer people and that kind of thing. Getting that one big hit is
Yeah,
not
because we metrics, right?
it's not
And
a
who doesn't
defining,
want
now
their
I'm
TikTok or
successful
anything
kind of a
to get
thing.
a whole bunch of, but it
It
doesn't
can
pay
come and
anything.
go and be a little fickle.
And then what winds up happening, especially in that field of content entrepreneurship marketing, if you do something and that went viral, you're going to try to constantly repeat that. And that's when you see a lot of these kids getting themselves in trouble, breaking into places that they shouldn't, messing with people that they shouldn't, because they have no real system that they built on. They hit on something, a bunch of people liked it, and in their mind is like, oh, I'm off to the races. This is going to be my moment. And me also having some music background, I know how it is to think that you have a moment because you performed somewhere or you did something and there's crickets, right? And it's not because you're a bad musician, like the same instance with your friend. It's not because he didn't have another hit in him. It's not because he lost his mojo. It's just that he didn't understand the other side of it, which causes us to still have to be systematic. How many times Have you heard musicians say, I just want to do the music. I don't want to involve myself with all that other stuff. And then 10 years later, they're like, I wish I would have involved myself in all that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad? Yeah. And so there's a part in there. So this is not related to music, but similarly. And he was interviewed at one point by a woman who said, "Well, I'm a novelist and I want to be a creative writer. And, how can I get, how can I do it? How can I get a bestseller?" And he said, "Go take a sales class." She said, "I'm an artist, I don't do sales. I'm a writer. I write novels. I don't do." He said, "But you said you wanted to be a bestseller, not a best writer." And so any of it is, it's more than, it really doesn't happen that you're just the best singer or just the best artist or just the best writer or just the best producer of whatever your product is that has you be the one who suddenly now everybody wants, right? It involves a lot of basically sales and marketing, self promotion. I also want to throw out one other thing, which is that part of the preparation of it's not really necessarily a system. Excuse me. It's not necessarily a system, but part of the preparation for success is being able to embrace success. So you mentioned these sports people, whether it's musicians or sports or anybody, is when people love you, when people really love you, it's a lot to receive. I mean, I went to this bluegrass thing called IBMA. It was in Chattanooga just this past week. And I'm a singer and I have a sister and she also sings, and we play music. I'm not a professional performer. I'm more focused on the jamming community, but I do love to sing. And I very frequently have this happen. Like I just smile and nod. People recognize me even if I don't recognize them. And so this fellow came up to me and said, "I know you." I'm like, "Okay, yeah." I don't really know. So then he said, "Oh, I remember. I was at this festival we all go to, and you and your sister were singing with this other fellow and a couple other people, and it was the best music I'd ever heard. It was some of the best singing I ever heard. It was just so magical. I don't know if you know this, but so and so was sitting there and he recorded the whole thing, and we were just mesmerized. This was like, somebody was like, 'You sound like Linda Ronstadt.' It was like this great thing." And he kind of effused about it for a while. And, you know, I mean, I know I'm pretty good, but, like the best music you ever heard in your life? I mean, thank you. So there are so many ways I could have interacted with that. And hopefully the way I interacted with it was graciously, like, "Thank you for noticing. That's really, oh, how kind. Oh, I'm so glad. It was a pleasure for you. That's really great. Yes, I sure do love singing, and so much fun with my sister, and it's great, right?" I could do it that way. I could receive it. Receiving is such a big part of being successful in life, in your relationships, in your business. Are you receiving? I could have also said, "Wow, I didn't think we were that good. I mean, that's the best music you ever heard. Geez, Oh, you want to play with me? Wow, I didn't expect that. And you're a better guitar player than I am by far." Like, do you see all the ways I might minimize that? But I have learned if I touch somebody, I don't have to be responsible for that experience. I don't need to diminish that experience. I can allow that person their experience. And by the way, not for nothing, but that bolsters my reputation. So now if I were to ever say to that person, hopefully I'll keep in touch with them, like, "I'm doing this event I do, events occasionally. You should come." He's way more likely to come. But if I had said, "Oh, that old thing," or "I'm not that great," or "Oh boy, I'm so surprised," right? People want you
That's a great
to
lesson. And
equate
as
the
I wind up
experience
and
they
get
have
you
of
out of
you.
here,
And if they
what are
think you're
some
awesome,
two
who
two
am I
things
to
that
tell them that they should think I'm
entrepreneurs
so
should
awesome?
be thinking about? Solopreneurs, one, two things, but one for persons that are just starting out and they think that they're at it alone, and someone who has probably had financial success and now is looking around and they can't keep up.
Well, first of all, I mentioned earlier this chief enthusiasm officer. So I created a quiz online. It tells you about your CEO personality. Most entrepreneurs don't really think of themselves as CEOs, but it's a good acronym. So chief enthusiasm officer, chief expert officer, chief empowerment officer, and chief excellence officer. So there's four types. And the I so going back to we started in the beginning is like, what's your style? Are you trying to create yourself in a way that doesn't acknowledge what your tendencies are? And so I would support people in going and looking at my quiz on my website, which is lizwolfcoaching.com, and just take the quiz to find out more about your CEO personality. So because what we're discovering together is preferences matter, and you'll be more likely to be consistent, which would be my second piece of quote unquote coaching advice, which is consistency goes a long, long way, long way. And so being consistent, once you find the system that works for you, or being in discovery of a system that works for you, don't give up on it too soon. Keep working on it. That consistency over time. I think this is what people get real excited about things, and then their enthusiasm dwindles is the word I was looking for, and then they become less excited about it, and then their consistency
Well, there you
drops
have
off.
it, everybody.
So we've
I
all
told you that
experienced
we
that in
sit
some
you
way or
at the feet
another
of
in
the
our life,
masters.
and I think
We
sticking
want
with
to
that
have a conversation to
carries a
help
lot
you
of
evolve
power.
your life. And I believe that we accomplished that today. Listen, we don't ask you for Cash Apps, Venmos, or Apple Pays, or any of those things. And those things are good for those that do. We want to lead with value. But we do ask that you do something in return. One, that you support our guests. So all of Liz information is in the description. Go to the website, take the test if you are trying to figure out your preferences. And I'm going to do it too because, I think I know, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And that you hit like, subscribe, and share so these conversations can get into the ears of others. Finally, walkingvictory.me and anything Walking Victory on any social handles, except for on LinkedIn, which is just my name. Follow us there so that you can help us continue to grow, build, and take over the world. The book should be out soon. I keep saying it. Awakening I Am. By the time you're listening to this, it may be out. So I have to say it. And you can get that there anywhere that you can purchase books. But you can simplify it and go to our website. Don't walk making excuses. Don't walk being inferior and lacking confidence and deflecting when somebody give you a compliment. Take those compliments, embrace them, make them your character, and the character will lead you to greatness. And in greatness, in your journey, we walk in victory. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace. Thank you. That was an awesome conversation.
Thank you. It really was. Thank you.